Today, more than ever, Americans need a means to protect their life savings. Birch Gold Group offers peace of mind for your nest egg through a rollover to an IRA backed by physical gold. Take advantage of the long-term stability that gold provides by investing in a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group, the precious metal IRA specialists. Call Birch Gold Group today at 888-999-5191 and receive their free information kit on gold. Call 888-999-5191. That's 888-999-5191.
Have you heard? Proactive Plus is faster and better than ever. Stay tuned for a $1,000,000 bottle giveaway, and you'll also receive free shipping. With Proactive Plus, your acne can heal, and you can help prevent new breakouts. Don't miss this limited time offer. We're going to let 1,000,000 people try Proactive Plus risk-free and get 2 free gifts, and also receive free shipping when you call right now. Call 800-393-6272. That's 800-393-6272.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Justice for All. I'm George Yates. I'm your host, and we'll be here for the next hour here in lovely, where are we? Chesapeake, Virginia, on 1650 AM on K-Talk Radio. Our phone number is 454-1650. We don't usually get any calls. We need to have somebody. We need to get somebody that I hire. I pay them to call in, and then other people will call. So just imagine that if you call in, we'll give you $1. So we got to pay people to call. So anyway, we're here. If you have never listened to the show before, I'm George Yates. I'm a lawyer in Virginia Beach, criminal defense mostly, and 30 years and counting, and been on the show here for about a year and a half, and it's been really fun so far. We've established ourselves as I think we do a lot of stuff on this show here that nobody else in Hampton Roads does. We interview authors and experts, and mostly in the area of criminal justice. And for the year and a half, I go back, and we just have so many shows, so many really smart people, way smarter than I am, law professors and constitutional law experts and, trial lawyers and judges and these authors that write these books about everything from criminal conspiracies to, mass incarceration in prisons. And but today, what I like about the way we do the show is I'm looking at my page here and I don't have anything written on it. I have absolutely a blank sheet in front of me. So usually that's how I do my interviews. I'll read the book, I'll try to, and then we'll interview the author. And a lot of times I don't even know what I'm going to ask them until I get started. And the show just kind of goes that way. And next thing you know, an hour's gone by, and sometimes 2 hours when we have a 2-hour format. And at the end of the hour or two, I go, wow, where did the time go? Because once you get talking about somebody's book with the author of the book, it doesn't take them too long to start telling you what they like and what they don't like about whatever their subject is. So anyway, if you've never had a chance to join us before on Justice for All, please remember that we're here on Saturdays from 2 to 3 on 1650 AM live. And then you can always go to my website at www.ghylaw.com. or onto our YouTube channel for Justice for All with George Yates, and you can listen to all of our archived shows because we must have 50 or 75 shows now that we've done, and we've had some really interesting guests. So it's been really gratifying that I'll walk around the courthouse in Virginia Beach where I practice law mostly, and I'll run into prosecutors and other defense lawyers that have heard this show, and they'll say, "Hey, George, I listened to your show, and yeah, it's really good," or "My wife listens to your show," or anyway, so give it a listen, and if you want to see what else we've done, you can go back and listen to some of our back shows. They're all recorded, and see some of the guests that we've had. So try to tell your friends about it. Justice for All with George Yates every Saturday from 2 to 3, and I think maybe this fall we might go back to a 2-hour format. We'll see, but next week, we're going to have the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers with us. The executive director will be with us, and then the president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers will be with us. So that'll be good. We'll be talking about criminal justice reform and that kind of stuff. And some of it, we try to keep this show so that it's not for lawyers. It's I'm a lawyer and all, but I try to keep it so that people that are of general interest would be interested in what we're talking about here. And we're not just conservative and we're not just liberal. We kind of take both positions, because I think the problem with the country today might well be is that if you're conservative, then you have to think one thing. If you're a liberal, you have to think another thing. And I don't think that's the way we come down here on the show. We try to tell it to you straight. Anyway, so without further ado, let's get on with today's show. I've got my producer here. His name's Greg Hall, and I'm not sure what book you've written. Greg, have you got a book that you got out?
I'm working on it.
Yeah, he's working on his book. Ordinarily, and I'm working on my book too, because if we're going to really be a perfect a podcast caster, you got to have a book. And I like to listen to podcasts too, and some of the best podcasters out there have their own books. So let's see. I got a blank sheet over here. What are we talking about today, Greg? What's on our agenda? Since we don't have a famous author here on the show today, what are we doing?
Well, speaking of blank sheets, that's also my book. Is right now currently a blank sheet.
Oh, a blank sheet.
There hasn't been a page written, but we're talking about several things that have kind of popped up in the news. A few things you brought up while we were grabbing coffee, but one of the things I found and I thought would be an interesting perspective to hear from you as a criminal defense lawyer and maybe as an individual. This whole thing with cops having the video recorded now with crimes and things that happen. Should cops get to review the video before they write their report or before they get on the stand, in court? And that was an article actually found on NACDL's website and, the Marshall Project, of course, which, I'm a big fan. So that was one of the topics. And, what do you think about that, George?
Well, the whole cops and cameras thing, cameras are going to be great, but the problem is going to be, sometimes the cops, the camera got turned off, or how come we don't have the camera? It's kind of like what happened with Richard Nixon in the video. He had audio tapes there in the White House, and all of a sudden there's 18 and a half minutes missing. What happened to those 18 minutes? So the whole thing about cameras is they're not going to be perfect. I think the fact that, of course cops ought to be able to review the video before they file their final report. They're not going to be perfect. I think that what you're talking about, the Marshall Project, they're very criminal defense oriented, and they're all distrustful of cops and distrustful of authority, and they're taking that real liberal, pro-individual, almost anti-cop kind of thing, because we want to keep the cops honest. The fact is that the vast majority of cops are pretty daggone honest and hardworking guys, and I think that if you don't let them go look at their own. Isn't it their property? It's their video. The possibility exists that if an officer isn't allowed to go, let's say, look at the video and refresh his memory as to, he's going to go ahead and have some impressions about what happened. But I think that you've got to have their ability to go back and look at their video and before they file a report. If they want to. I think most cops aren't going to have the time. They're just going to file their report, say, here's the video if you want to look at it. And if there's some difference between what their memory was and what the video says, well, they'll have to explain it. And defense lawyers are good at probably trying to find some small, or maybe major difference in what their officer says happened as opposed to what the video says happened. I think what they're pointing to right now is some of these officers are saying what happened in these shooting cases, and the officers are saying one thing and the video is saying something completely different. What good is their report going to do? You're thinking, oh, well, maybe they can look at the video first and then try to explain their behavior, and that was the argument for them not being able to look at it. But and that's going to be allow, I suppose, some dishonest cops, to change their account of what occurred to make their defense better if in fact they did go kill somebody or murder somebody, because these cops are being charged with murder now if they've done these things. And the video is probably the only reason that they're being prosecuted, because if you just take their word for it, they're not going to be prosecuted, because we have a tendency to believe cops when they say what occurred out on the street, and we should. And that's the problem with it. If you go saying that cops can't do certain things, or you start saying that you're not going to be able to change your story or be able to review the video, you're basically telling every single cop out there, we don't trust you. What kind of signal is that to our law enforcement? So I think we got a real problem. Sure, you've got some cops out there that are making mistakes, or that are bad cops, but you can tell every cop out there that we don't trust you before we even send you out on the street with a badge and a gun. these are the guys that we're trusting to save us out there. So, I kind of take, as a criminal defense lawyer, I'm taking the side of the Marshall Project, but as a citizen, I'm probably saying, I want to tell the cops that I trust them before I send them out there. I think most of your citizens are going to say, let's err on the side of the cops. Let's err on the side of giving them the benefit of the doubt until it just becomes, and that's all in the face of all this. There's a lot of bad incidents out there, but once again, we've had cops on our show, and they're getting a bad rap on a lot of these incidents because that's the one that gets the press. The liberal media. I'm sorry to sound like Rush Limbaugh. But the media does love to pounce on these liberal stories, and not to say that they're not valid, but we have a tendency to, the 99% of the time that the cops are doing the right thing and saving the kitty cat from the tree, that's not getting the news. It's the cop that's doing the wrong thing, the bad thing. And so it's kind of like this whole mass incarceration issue that's the flavor of the month now. We've got too many low-level non-violent drug offenders in prison, where we're locking too many people up. And that's, you pick up the paper every day and it's, we're locking too many people up for low-level offenses. When in fact the vast majority of people that are in prison today on a state level are there because they're violent. And the reason why we've got a large population of people in prison in this country today is because we have a lot of violent people that we've locked up. And I think we do need to revisit the idea of parole, perhaps, because we did abolish parole in Virginia back in 96. And so now if you give a guy a 35-year sentence, he's doing 30 years of it. And, maybe these sentences are a little long, but we are locking up the idea that we're going to reduce our prison population by a significant amount and anytime soon by just letting out a few non-violent drug offenders. You're crazy. That's only a very small number of people. The vast number of people that are in the prisons today are in the state court. They're state prisons. They're not federal prisons. So when Obama starts talking about, or Holder or whatever, that we're going to start releasing people, these non-violent drug offenders, that's a small percentage of who's in the prisons today. And we got some bad people that are locked up. Now, you got a 20-year-old kid that goes out and maybe in some gang-related violence shoots somebody and he dies. And now, what are you going to give him as a sentence? A lot of people would like to give him the death penalty. Other people would want to lock him up for life. So you got a 20-year-old kid, you can lock him up for life for something he did when he was 20. So now let's just imagine, let's fast forward it to he's 40 now. He's in prison. Is he still violent at 40? But, is he still violent at 25? Yeah. Is he violent at 30? Yeah, maybe. This is the problem that I've experienced with young men who commit the vast majority of our violent crimes. Between 18 and 25, they're pretty violent. They remain violent even into their 20s and 30s. But how violent is that guy when he's in his 40s and 50s? So, maybe we need, if we want to start reducing this vast number of, people that are mass incarcerated in this country, maybe start looking at some of the older and reintroduce some parole for somebody that's done their time or they've aged out of their violence. Because people do age out of their violent tendencies. But you can't pick up the paper. I just read an article just today and where we've got these, let's reduce the population, the prison population. So, but the liberals and it's interesting. We were talking about this before. The conservatives and liberals agree on so many things, but the political parties don't want you to do that because they want conservatives to believe that liberals are bad, and liberals want to believe conservatives are bad. And the Republicans make money because the liberals want to give. Because liberals are bad, so conservatives give them. But the fact is, conservatives want to release people from prison too, but they want to release them because it costs too much to incarcerate them. And liberals want to release them because they're do-gooders, they're bleeding hearts. They both want to release, but for different reasons. Liberals and conservatives are angry at the government right now, but for different reasons, right? And so I don't know. It's really interesting that conservatives and liberals have a lot more in common than you would believe. For different reasons, they want to get to the same result. But the the political parties would never benefit from that because, Hillary wouldn't get her PAC money from her oligarch billionaires. And, the Republican hopefuls wouldn't get their millions of dollars to their PACs from their oligarch billionaires. Because, the political campaigns are being financed by the wealthiest people. The little people do not finance these campaigns. Only the super wealthy do. So we end up with a government that's being governed by, the 130th wealthiest families. And, and it benefits all of them to just keep us, the little folks, hating each other for silly things like, the Confederate flag or, some... that dominates the news is the Confederate flag, as if that's going to make any difference really in the country in the long term.
So both parties would rather push us to brinksmanship than to come up with some kind of blended approach.
Yeah, I mean, Ralph Nader was talking about the fact that conservatives and Tea Party people have a lot more in common with liberals and libertarians. Libertarians and Tea Party are how many libertarians are former Democrats? How many libertarians are former Republicans? But, so which party do you vote? I mean, if you are, let's say you're a Democrat and you're pro-life, you would never be elected as a Democrat. You have to, everything's politically correct. There's another reason why Trump, we've already been 20 minutes in our show. We haven't mentioned Trump yet. How can you not mention Donald Trump talking about what's going on in the country today? I mean, here he was. He's talking about how politicians are bought and paid for, and he's bought and paid for everybody on the stage the other night, he said. It's so true. They're all bought and paid for. Republicans and Democrats are bought and paid for by both parties. How many these 130 wealthiest families have given $1 million to both parties? And these PACs, I read Hillary Clinton's PAC. You can now donate to these PACs, and they're anonymous. You don't know who's donated to these PACs. And the only guy who's really telling the truth right now about this is Bernie Sanders, who's leading Hillary in Vermont now by 8 points. Hillary is losing to Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire right now by 8 points. And Bernie Sanders is the one out there saying it's legalized bribery. He's calling the PAC system. It's true. It is bribery. And yet it's all totally legal because of Citizens United. So Hillary's I think, in trouble. Don't you think that Hillary Clinton is, this email scandal and the Clinton Foundation and all of it. Hillary Clinton, aren't we a little tired of the Clintons and the Bushes? I see Jeb Bush. I'm sure he's competent, but don't we want to see another Bush up there? I see him. I say, your name is Bush. You shouldn't be around. And Hillary, too. We're tired of the Clintons, aren't we? And the Bushes. Let's get rid of them and let's get somebody new up there.
Bush Clinton, the rematch.
Oh my God!
Now you brought up something though, and what was that stat? You said something about 130 some families have donated more than 50% of all the campaign.
You can. It's all over the news. How the exact statistics is not important, but the fact is that more than half of these candidates all love to say how small donors. Hillary Clinton will say, "Oh, most of my campaign is being financed by the small donors," and make it look like it's all grassroots. I think Ted Cruz has gotten almost all of his money from 3 people, and Hillary's got some money from the small people. There's no doubt that there's $100 and $250 contributions coming in, but she's getting some huge donations from anonymous donors to her PAC. $1 million from several candidates, people. Then you don't even know who they are. The rules do not even require that these PACs disclose where the money is coming from. And this is on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. They're all bought and paid for on both sides. And the fact is the system's corrupt. It's broken down. But Republicans want to blame Democrats, and Democrats want to blame Republicans when the fact is they're all in it together. And there was Hillary saying, we need to do campaign finance reform. But until that day comes, she's going to keep taking the money from the rich people, and their Clinton Foundation, where all the money that's come into the Clinton Foundation. And Hillary Clinton's got problems with this email thing. This story's got legs. I'm sorry, but she had classified information. She was sending out secret information on a private email server that the fact is, though, that's a crime. Smarter people than me will tell you whether or not that's a crime that she's committed, but this is classified information. You can't take this classified information home. Government people are not supposed to take it home with them and run it out on their private server. So, I mean,
I wouldn't even want to. You know what I mean? If you're responsible for that kind of information, it would seem like you wouldn't even want to have that possibility. But I do have a question for you where that's concerned. Do you think by them bringing all of this stuff out early that it'll be all swept under the rug by 16 months from now?
Good question. I mean, I was watching The Morning Joe the other day, and I love that show. And they had Gene Robinson on there, I think his name is. He's a columnist for the Washington Post, and he's a liberal. And they were kind of going after Hillary, and he was kind of backing off. You know, he wasn't about to go after Hillary Clinton. And Hillary's the darling of the liberals, and they just think that she's got. Who's to say that Joe Biden and they were talking about John Kerry and maybe Al Gore, running again for president? I mean, why not? I was always why didn't John Kerry try again in 2000? Why didn't Al Gore try again in 2004? He beat George W. in the popular vote, and in fact, if we'd recounted Florida, he probably would be the president. Why didn't he run again in 2004? And here's Al Gore. I mean, maybe he would be a great candidate to have now. Hillary was the odds on, and the last time that Obama waxed her. So who's to say that she's going to get it? I mean, she's got so many chips in, and everybody owes her. But I think that she's got some problems, especially this email thing that's happening. And wait till all the Clinton Foundation stuff comes out, all the possible conflicts of interest that were done with the Clinton Foundation and the money that they've received over the last. I think that a Republican candidate that has no skeletons in his closet, that's totally free of taint, one that's absolutely been vetted all the way from A to Z. I think a Republican candidate is going to beat Hillary. I was watching Bill Maher's show the other night. Did you see this? Bill Maher predicts Mario, who's the guy from Florida? Marco Rubio as president and Carly Fiorina as vice president, because then he'd have the Hispanic on the president's side, and then Carly Fiorina, who apparently, I didn't see the debate, but by all accounts, she kicked some butt in that other, the minor league debate the other night on Fox. So that would be an interesting one. Marco Rubio's got of course, he's kind of got his own problems with money and all that, but it's not corruption. He didn't steal any of it. He just has problems with bankruptcy and stuff. But he's a pretty interesting guy, and he's young. And then you got Carly Fiorina, who ran a failed company. I mean, Trump went after her big time. Did you see Trump's story about Carly Fiorina?
I didn't see that, but I did hear that he said he'd consider her as like a vice president candidate.
Trump did?
Yeah.
Carly?
Yeah. He said it's too early to tell. And,
I thought he'd get Megyn Kelly.
Oh, yeah, that would be something else. But Trump has brought one of the things, and I haven't ever been this excited, really, I'm kind of jaded on politics, but about watching a debate, because he brings a different flavor to the stage and kind of shows it what the three-ring circus that it is, really,
Well, yeah, it really, and it's the Republican strategists, the top dogs are just looking at and shaking their heads at Trump, but at the same time they can't just dismiss him, and after all that stuff last week with the stuff about Megyn Kelly and the blood coming out, and you would think that he would just fall. And I don't really know what the latest polls are going to show with Trump, but I thought, my favorite was in that debate the other night was John Kasich, and I think that as the governor of Ohio and former budget chairman when he was in the House, as well as on the Armed Service Committee, that guy's got he's got the best credentials really of anybody on that entire stage. I thought the other night, from a budget standpoint, from an armed service, national prominence while he was in the House, been a governor, two-term governor of Ohio, which is a swing state, which both parties want to win, and the president. John Case, plus he likes the poor people. Did you notice? I mean, the other night, he's the kind of guy that a lot of conservatives don't like, because he's a conservative Republican who believes that you cannot ignore the poor people. And so he's got a lot of credibility with liberals, because he's a guy that believes in conservative policies, but he also believes that you can't leave the poor. But he doesn't blame the poor for being poor, like so many Republicans do. They'll say, oh, well, you're poor because it's your own fault. And Kasich is way cooler than that about poor people. So I think a lot of independents, if Kasich was on the ticket even, And he's just started out. I think that of all the Republicans up there, he's in my opinion, as kind of a, sort of a left-leaning center kind of person. I mean, I'm kind of center-left. I go with the liberal stuff, but I'm not knee-jerk on it, So anyway, we're going to go to a break, but we're kind of doing some free-form stuff here. This is Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and we got Greg Hall here, and we're having some fun today. We're going to just be here another 30 minutes talking about the news of the day. So stay with us. We're going to go to a little break. And don't forget to tune in next week for the NACDL Executive Director, as well as the President coming in after that. And go on to my website at www.ghylaw. That's my law firm's website. That's ghylaw.com for archived shows of Justice for All. We'll be right back.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they showcase an excellent lunch buffet at their Chesapeake and Virginia Beach locations. Visit their 2 locations at 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off of Battlefield Boulevard and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard in Virginia Beach, and online at IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Dine at the India Palace
CBS
today.
News updates. Airplane flights grounded over a large part of the country right now because of a problem near Washington, D.C.
This is not the fault of the airline. This is essentially the traffic lights up and down the East Coast have gone out at a key intersection. So that's going to snarl traffic because they've essentially had to stop the flow of traffic through the center of the eastern seaboard.
As CBS correspondent Chris Van Cleve in Washington, until the problem is fixed, passengers like Mitchell Miller can expect to remain grounded.
What we have been told is that this system breakdown, it was brought up at one point within the past hour. It was thought to be resolved briefly, but then the system went down again, and that's why you have people literally waiting for plane flights all across the country. There's a former coworker of ours who has said he is waiting on a tarmac in Seattle.
Via Skype from the Denver airport, Mitchell Miller is the senior news director at WTOP in Washington. CBS News Update. I'm Jim Taylor.
Leaky faucet, refinishing old countertops? Hey, Gary Sullivan here. Perhaps you're restaining a deck or painting your living room. Whatever it is, let me help. I'm here to give you the tips you need to finish those pesky projects you've been putting off. If you're restaining, I have a tip for that. Can't get the paint off the hardwood floors? Got a tip for that too. I'm here to make sure that $5 repair doesn't turn into a $500 repair. Join me right here every weekend.
Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 9 a.m. on AM 1650 WHKT, The Answer.
Hi, this is Greg Picaveras, inviting you to join me for Sports Scene live each Wednesday from noon to 1, right here on News Talk 1650 and TuneIn.com by typing WHKT in the search box. Excellent guests and interaction at Greg Bick on Twitter, all powered by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Sports Scene each Wednesday from noon to 1, right here on News Talk 1650.
Are you prepared to defend yourself and your family against any threat? Veteran-owned and operated One Shot Trading Post is ready to make sure that you are. Continuing training and classes on defense, survival, and weapons. Full gunsmithing services, special orders and financing available with military discounts. $15 transfers, and One Shot Trading Post is always looking to buy, sell, or trade. Located at 4366 Holland Road at South Plaza Trail, make sure that you're ready for anything at One Shot Trading Post, 463-5893, OneShotTradingPost.com.
Mark Levin here, reminding you to tune in every evening, 6 to 9 p.m. for some no-holds-barred opinions and discussion of what's happening. If you don't have an opinion, don't worry. I'll give you one. So you have no excuses not to join the Mark Levin Show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 p.m. on your source for conservative talk radio, AM 1650 WHKT. Now, we have some real problems in our country, and they won't get any better by themselves. Be a part of the solution. Mark Levin, weekdays 6 to 9 on K-Talk 1650.
Mi Hogar is your restaurant for the finest Mexican cuisine in Hampton Roads. At Mi Hogar, everything is prepared fresh in a casual atmosphere. Enjoy traditional favorites such as quesadillas, tacos, burritos, and fajitas, as well as refreshing beverages. Mi Hogar has 2 locations, 4201 Granby Street in Norfolk and 801 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Call ahead at 640-7705. At Mi Hogar, there is something for everyone.
Okay, and so we're back here. This is Justice for All. I'm George Yates. I'm here with Greg Hall. And if you've just joined us, Justice for All is a weekly show. We're here from 2 to 3 every Saturday. Our phone number is 454-1650, and we're here every Saturday from 2 to 3. And you can see our archived shows on my law firm website, www.ghylaw.com. And I'm a lawyer in Virginia Beach, and I've had this show now for about a year and a half. And this week we don't have one of our, experts or authors on the show, so we're just kind of doing our kind of a news show today. What's in the news, and allowing us to kind of rant on whatever is on our minds. And so we were looking at this Airbnb story about how somebody was apparently in Europe or someplace in an Airbnb hostel or something like that, right? And they were raped or they were sexually molested or something. What was that?
It was in Spain. So this guy was traveling abroad and he was doing the Airbnb thing over there. And then this person locked them in the room, and he could hear like they were trying to grab a knife or something out of the kitchen.
Rattling of knives, yeah.
And then he thought, and they said, hey, if you don't do something sexual with me, then I'm not letting you out of that room. Or he thought he was going to end up dying. So he calls his mom. And his mom calls Airbnb, and what they did was they gave her a number to the Madrid police department, and that number wasn't correct or whatever, and they wouldn't give her the address. They said, basically, you got to call Spain Madrid PD department and have them request the address from us, when maybe she should have got the kid to text the address, is what I was thinking.
Well, did the police show up? I mean, did the guy ever get molested? I mean, what happened?
No, he got sexually he submitted and did some sexual acts with that person, and then of course felt bad about it. Well, probably during and later. And
was the guy prosecuted then? I mean, is it the subject of a criminal prosecution or what? What's the upshot of it?
No, what's happening is it's still it's so fresh, it's still happening right now. They're trying to figure it out. But Airbnb changed some policies as a result, and of course, Airbnb and Uber are both under attack by the hotel industry and the transportation.
Well, that's
industry.
the whole thing. It's. And I don't want to say, I think I've said this twice in the same show now, but the old attack on the liberal media. But I do think that Airbnb, Uber, these companies have come so far, so fast, to where they are just multi-billion-dollar companies in a very short period of time. And so you get one little story on Airbnb, and it just gets magnified. I mean, you wonder how much of this actually happens. I've never used Airbnb. You have, right? And you had a good experience with it. So
right.
I have used Uber. I think that is insanely cool, because in Virginia Beach for years I'd want to go, you're out and you've been drinking a little bit, and you say, I don't want to drive home, but it's going to take me an hour and a half to get a cab anywhere. But now Uber, you got a cab in 5 minutes. And so why in the world would anybody even think of drinking and driving, even a little bit anymore with Uber?
And Uber is, unless it's their peak rate, you've got a great rate compared to a traditional taxi cab.
But Uber is under attack now too, and you wonder how much of it is, the liberal media. You get one Airbnb thing, and that's going to make the headlines. And so, to what extent will that affect Airbnb? It's sort of like, is it like a shark attack? 100,000 people in the water, and one person gets attacked by a shark, and now nobody goes in the water. I mean, is a shark attack going to make you stay out of the water? And I surf a lot. I was down in Hatteras Island in June. I went down, and there had been 2 shark attacks right next to my house there in Waves. And, and I was out there surfing the day after a guy had gotten bit. And I didn't keep me out of the water, but I will say I'm in the ocean. I'm on my paddleboard, right? And I'm looking around me, and there's the Rodanthe Pier a mile to the north. And I look all the way down to Salvo, and there's not one person in the water but me. And I'm paddling. I'm out there. It was a nice day. It was surfing. I was not gonna not go surfing. And I go, well, wait a minute. My odds aren't very good out here. If I do fall in, I'm the only bait. I'm the only thing that the shark can bite. Because then when some other people came out into the water to go surfing, my odds just got better. 5 more people just came out into the water. Okay, now maybe the shark will eat them instead of me.
Yeah,
but I will say that every time I fell in the water, which of course that's not much with me surfing, But no, every time I go in the water, I was heading for my board with alacrity. Let me tell you what. I mean, I'm in the water now. I'm going, uh-oh. I swam for my board a little faster than I used to. But, once again, one shark attack, just like one Airbnb attack or one Uber problem. I mean, but that's what happens. Or one child gets abducted and now parents won't let their child go to the park. Or we have now with our 24/7 media and social media and everything else, when we now have anything happen, whether it's a shark attack or an Airbnb problem or Uber or anything, it gets magnified now 100,000-fold, right? Or what is that all about? Or is this just the media picking up on this sensational event? And are people going to change their behavior and not use Airbnb or not use Uber? What's going on with all that? Well, that's going to be the question.
I think you're right. And I don't think people are going to stop using these services because, look, I mean, even with Airbnb, I mean, you meet the person first. And I'm not saying you can always tell if somebody's, crazy.
How do you know? I mean, I've never even thought about Airbnb. I thought, God, isn't that kind of weird? You're going into somebody's house. I mean, how do you know?
Well, the setup's a little bit better. I mean, I lived in Venice Beach for a long time, and so one of my friends that I was going to stay with, she's using her place as an Airbnb setup now instead of having roommates, and I had a couple of days of where I didn't want to stay on somebody's couch or whatever. And I said, hey, I'll do it. And this person was cool. They were, in the film industry. He was married.
But how do you know on Airbnb if you're trying to go online? I mean, it's not like a hotel where that if you're going to go stay, even at a Hampton Inn, I mean, that you've got a door and it's going to be locked. And how do you know? How in the world does Airbnb vet these houses?
Well, people get reviewed by people that have stayed there. So, I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, I'm sure the guy that in Spain didn't get a bad review.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure that place has got a bad
I think it's going to
review.
make people think twice about Airbnb, in my opinion. Just like if you have a child abduction, and it's headline news, I think it's going to make parents think twice about how they or whatever. Shark attack keeps people out of the water. There's no way that Airbnb can't suffer overall from some headline news like this. I just think that it's inevitable.
Yeah, and we're going to see a lot of things happen in that industry as
how are they changing it? You said they're changing their procedures.
Well, if you call with something like that now, they're going to reach out to that police department for you and say, hey, we've got, I mean, they kind of had made some changes, but I think this is an evolving. These are new technologies that haven't been present before, and they're, like you said, it's going to evolve.
Well, it's got the whole trust issue has changed all over the country. I remember when you think back until after World War II, and those of us, of course, weren't around for that, but we know about the history of it. And after World War II, we had all the GIs that were hitchhiking out west, and we had Route 66 and all of that. And hitchhiking was just part of the culture. And when I was a kid coming along, I could hitchhike too. And we would hitchhike all over the place. I hitchhiked cross country when I was a kid, more than once, up and down the West Coast and all that. And I don't know if it was the Jim Morrison song, Riders of the Storm. I truly believe that song, that one song, may have changed the whole future of hitchhiking. But now, back then, back in the late 60s and 70s, hitchhiking in the 50s, everybody hitchhiked. And they trusted that they were stick out their thumb. The person that picked up the hitchhiker didn't fear him, and the hitchhiker didn't fear the person that was picking him up. You do not see people hitchhiking anymore. It's gone. It's over. What changed? And maybe it's what we were talking about earlier. We're living in a more violent society. I mean, are we really? Is it more violent? Is it? We were talking about earlier, mass incarceration. There are a lot of bad people that are locked up in the prisons today. And that's a good question. I mean, but hitchhiking disappeared because of the trust. And yet, we have Airbnb, where people are not just sharing their car for an hour or less, driving down the road, or maybe longer, depending upon how long the trip is. But now you're sharing your home. I mean, and what does the person that's sharing their home have to fear from the person that's coming in from Airbnb? It's
right. I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing my place with complete strangers.
It's an amazing business model to me. It's amazing that it works, but it does depend a lot on trust. And the fact that it's worked means that, and so does Uber. and it has worked. So it's really going to be, it's interesting.
Well, the
forward.
difference is, okay, in Uber and with Airbnb, you can also rate the people that stay with you or ride with you. And I have a friend that has a horrible Uber rating. And so, people pass
as a rider,
as a rider.
Oh, because he abuses the driver?
Well, he gets in, and what happens
and
is
he's a friend of yours.
Yeah, he's a good friend.
Let's hope he's not a good friend.
He's a good dude. You'd love him. But
sure.
but what happens is,
you're right. He abuses Uber drivers.
Well, if he's been
a real buddy of mine.
Well, what happened is to clarify it, he has as a courtesy, some of those drivers will let you access their Bluetooth and play your music. He always requests that now when he gets in Bluetooth, and sometimes he, anyway.
And so they give him a bad rating because he wants.
But his wife yells at him, it ends up the wife is usually with him and she's yelling at him, so that's why he's got a bad Uber rating. So he needs to work on that.
So that means that if you get a bad Uber rating, I've only used Uber a few times. I would guess I've got a good rating. I'm checked, but because I was always very nice, but I didn't tip. And I hear some people do tip, but I just get out and I don't even tip because, in fact, I even asked the driver the first time, and he said, "No, you don't need." I said, "Okay, cool."
You're not supposed to tip. That's
you're not.
That's one of the things people like about Uber. The thing I never liked about the cab thing was, I'm like, well, I mean, the tip thing always has bothered a lot of people.
I was always a big tipper.
Me too. I do it, but I feel like, man, I gotta, and Uber, you don't. It's included.
But the only way to have a taxi cab before was to actually call your cab driver long before you even left to go out that evening.
Yeah.
Because in Virginia Beach or in this area, cabs were just so. No wonder Uber. What a need that they satisfied. I think Airbnb is a little different because there's almost always a hotel or a motel somewhere. But the fact so I think that the business model of Uber is here to stay. I'm not sure about Airbnb, but it's working. But they got to work out some problems with safety in Airbnb.
Big time. And one of the stats, they had a stat that in that article that said that there were also a lot of sexual assaults in hotels and stuff. So, I wasn't
true.
Really, I wasn't really aware of that. But have you ever stayed in a bed and breakfast before? Just a bed and breakfast?
Oh yeah, I have.
So some of the,
but usually the bed and breakfast they're almost set up like they're
well established.
Yeah, that's right, and they've been there a long time, and they're in your little tour guide or whatever it is, and you know that they're there and they've been around a long time. So, but like I said, these are new things to me, and of course I don't travel that much anymore because I've got small children anyway, so I'm pretty much a stay-at-home kind of person these days. I haven't really hit the road much lately. I would suppose that it's a good thing to do. Obviously, if you've got a rating system in place where you can go on and you've got former travelers saying nice things, and that's how it's going to work. You've got to get one out of the way, right? And then two, and then three, and then get yourself a rating like anything else in the world. I think about me as a lawyer. People will come in, they've never met me before, and they come in and they're trusting me with representing them in a case where it's not life or death, but it's the most serious thing that's ever happened to them. And I'm always amazed at how with really on just a very short notice, they'll come in and they'll retain me, and it's a great it's gratifying that they're going to put their trust in me like that. Of course, they know that I'm a licensed lawyer and all of that, but then they'll go online and they'll check you out. That is what the online does allow you to do. So now, I'm a lawyer in Virginia Beach, and they say, okay, who is this guy? George Yates. All right, he's a criminal defense lawyer, right? What does he do? They can check you out, and then there's people that are, but they're so easy to. To what extent can people manipulate their ratings? We know people do that. They can. Can you manipulate your online rating with Airbnb or these Uber things?
No, because you have to have paid through Airbnb and stayed there to review that person,
right?
And you can't just anonymously review. And they say about 50% of the people that are on the web rely heavily on reviews, and I'm one of those people. And I'll tell you, most people can spot a fake review when they see it. And it's always a preponderance of the evidence, right? There's 67 reviews, and there's a couple of negative ones, but maybe they're not so bad,
Right. Well, anyway, if you've just joined us, I'm George Yates, and this is Justice for All. And every week we generally are on a criminal justice topic. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Virginia Beach. I was a prosecutor way back in the day in the 80s in Virginia Beach, and I've been a criminal defense lawyer mostly for the last 25 years with a practice here in the in the Seven Cities region, as we now are beginning to call the Hampton Roads region. It's now the Seven Cities. We should just call ourselves the Seven Cities. I say, okay, where's that? I live in the Seven Cities. You say, what are those 7 cities? What are they? Hampton, Newport News, let's say Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Portsmouth, and Norfolk. So anyway, but if you've just joined us, every week we're here from 2 to 3, and I really do have a lot of fun on the show. Greg is the producer of this show, and he has a tendency to pick me some really cool guests. Most of the time they've written a book, and so I get the book sent to me, and I get a chance to read the book. Most of the time I get to read the whole book, but usually Greg hopefully gives me a little bit of notice so I get a chance to read the book, and then I'll interview the author. Usually they're really smart people. And and I try to ask them the questions that aren't just the frequently asked questions. We get a whole hour in in-depth interview, and I try to ask the questions that maybe they don't always get asked. I think they appreciate that. That we try to explore areas of things that are more interesting, that just the typical stuff that they get asked all the time. I think that's kind of the difference in my show and a lot of other interview shows that we do. And I got a big kick out of, I don't know how many people that listen to this show listen to a podcast, but we were talking about podcasts and the other day, and I'd like to, of course, you can find our archive shows at ghylaw.com. If you just joined us, go to ghylaw.com. That's my website for my law firm, and also has all our past shows. But I've been listening to Tim Ferriss. He's the guy with the 4-Hour Body and the 4-Hour Work Week. Now, that book, 4-Hour Work Week, I don't know how many people have read that book. Imagine working 4 hours and still a week. Now, that's a guy. No wonder that's been still the top 10 business selling book. Because you see that, you go, wait a minute. 4-Hour Work Week. How am I going to pull that off? Well,
I got to check it out. Yeah.
He's got a great show, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, because he's a dynamic dude. Have you listened to the Tim Ferriss show, this podcast?
Yeah, and that's been on my radar for quite a while. And he's made himself a guinea pig for his own, things that he thinks.
Oh my God! And he had Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese on there, and those guys, they just done a workout. You got Laird Hamilton, who looks like he's carved out of a rock, the greatest surfer in the world, and he's I read his book, and I read it all the time because he's like the most ultimate workout dude, and he's married to Gabby Reese, and they're pretty cool people. And Tim did a workout with them, and they like go they do these heavy workouts, then they go like get into an ice bath. They immerse themselves in ice. They do all this stuff that subjects their body to these incredible rigors, and then they pop out, and I guess it gives them this incredible otherworldly performance. And then he interviewed this other Tara Brach, I guess is her name. She's a Meditations. Have you listened to that show? I mean,
no.
Wow, I was very mellow after I listened to that one. So he's got and they're long, they're in-depth interviews. They go on for like 2 hours, and he asks the kind of questions that I think that we get into on our show. We get into these kinds of give and take questions with our guests, which I think they really appreciate.
Well, I think people are looking for, look, you can find the regurgitated news everywhere, 24/7 spin on everything like you were saying. But, to find something that's unique and different and something that maybe you haven't considered, that's what we try to do here. And that's what some of those podcasts you mentioned managed to do.
Yeah, well, Ferriss, what's cool about him is he's done so much of this stuff to himself. And yet he's very self-deprecating. He gets up there, he was talking with Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese, and here's when you read his book, The 4-Hour Body, you go, this guy subjected himself to all kinds of wild stuff to see what would be the optimum diet and what's the ultimate workout, but yet he completely was like in reverence to these other workout guys, to Hamilton and Reese, and so he doesn't blow his own horn at all. He's like always says, listen, it's very cool how self-deprecating he is. It's kind of like, sort of like me. I'm nowhere near as smart as the people that I interview on my show, and I really like that they come in onto my show and I get the chance to interview some really smart people, and it's so fun I feel like I've gone to a graduate level course in the law, interviewing these law professors and these guys that have written books on constitutional law and all this stuff, and it's really gratifying to talk with these people that know a lot more about stuff than you do.
Well, and I know that you've, certainly taken that knowledge and put it into your personal and professional life. But where Laird was concerned, was there anything that stuck out about their workouts that you remembered that was?
Oh, yeah. They work out underwater. They do all this underwater stuff. Laird's got a swimming pool. Laird and Gabby, they've got this swimming pool with a staircase in the middle of the pool. And see, Gabby Reese was this world-class volleyball player, right? She was like the ultimate sand volleyball player. I mean, she was just tall and she could spike like crazy, but all those years of jumping up and down just destroyed her knees. Okay, and Laird's got to be in his early 50s now too. So the problem with working out when you start to get older, the rigors of working out and lifting weights and doing all this strenuous activity is really hard on your joints. So they're all into this underwater stuff. Laird will go underwater and pick up heavy stuff and walk like on the bottom of a pool or the bottom of the ocean or whatever. And they'll get weights and dumbbells, and then they'll go up and down steps while they're underwater. So they're constantly stressing their bodies on VO2, oxygen. They're gasping for air the whole time. And then when they come up for air, they're just completely wiping themselves out. But it's low impact on their joints. See what I'm saying? I mean, because you're subjecting your knees and your elbows and all of your other body parts to low stresses, and yet because you're underwater, you're anaerobic, right? You're not getting as much air, so you're expanding your ability to utilize oxygen. So then when you come up, and now you're trying to do stuff on dry land, your joints aren't all beat up because you've been doing it underwater. They got a staircase in there, right in the middle of the pool. There's a staircase, so you're going up and down steps underwater with all kinds of weights and doing all these kinds of things. So then they'll get out and do all this other kind of stuff. So they're really what they're doing. It's cutting edge. They're doing all this, and they're doing this with other trainers and other world-class athletes. I mean, they train with all the top athletes in the world who will come and want to do this kind of stuff with them, like Ferris. They're pushing the envelope to see what the body can put up with. I mean, well, look what he does. He goes out and he surfs 100-foot waves, and he's pushing the envelope in every possible way. Of course, if you're underwater and you're learning how to do all this stuff underwater, of course, it helps save his life, because if you're going to surf a 100-foot wave and then go underwater and be held under, it's a good thing to feel comfortable under there for long periods of time. So I think he does it as a survival thing, but Ferris, in that interview with him, was anyway. Give it a listen.
I got to listen to that.
Yeah, if you like, and it's good if you're a workout person. I mean, anytime people are working out and they like working out, they're athletes, they always want to get a different edge on it. What are you going to go to the gym and just kind of, how are you going to do what's your optimum workout? Like for instance, a lot of people. I used to work out at Waring's gym with Bob Waring, and Bob would always say, may he rest in peace. and Bob would say, go work out with weights first, and then go do your aerobic workout last. Or that's what Laird says too. But how many people go into the gym and they get on the bike first, and then they go work out with weights second? Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of been reversed, But most of these world-class athletes do it the other way. So anyway, but yeah, that was and if you go to it, this was a Wall Street Journal. What was this from last week? So pick of the podcasts. So anyway, we got just a couple of minutes left. Anything we haven't covered this week?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit.
Well, if you've just joined us, I'm George Yates, and this is Justice for All, and we've just had a little stream of consciousness. Hope you've enjoyed the show today. If you want to listen to my back podcasts, you can go to my website at www.ghylaw.com. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in Virginia Beach. Been practicing there for 25 years, and I have a lot of fun here on Saturdays with the show. Like next week, we've got the NACDL, which is the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, which I am a member of. And it's a great organization, and they really do advance the cause of criminal justice and try to address a lot of the issues in our criminal justice system today. We've talked about a little bit of that today. So join us next week from 2 to 3 to listen to when I discuss talk with the executive director of the NACDL, and then we're going to have the president of the NACDL coming on after that. And then every Saturday from 2 to 3, we've got some really interesting guests lined up going forward. I got a lot of books that have been sent to me, and Mr. Hall here is trying to get those authors lined up. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to our show, please listen. Of course, you can also, if you hear us live here, you can also get us online, right? What's the app to listen to the show online?
I like TuneIn. There's a bunch of them, but TuneIn. and it's
Tune in radio. Right?
Tune in app right off of your iPhone or smartphone, any Android.
And really, internet radio is really, unless you're in your car, you're stuck with. Even now, if you get the internet, because at home, I don't get very good broadcasts, but a tune-in radio is just as clear as a bell.
And I've seen that we've had close to like 3,000 people listening to this show on TuneIn, so it's pretty awesome.
Right. So, and we try not to take just the conservative or the liberal. We try to listen to both sides here. Try to tell it like it is. So, and these days we have politicians that don't want to do that. So it's important that we get a balanced perspective on everything. So listen. Thanks for being with us today. Like I said, I'm George Yates. This is Justice for All. I've been here with Greg Hall and Dee, the engineer. How you doing, Dee? Anyway, so Dee just gave me the thumbs up. And, that's the name of my band. We had a great time playing last night. So we're going to be playing on September 4th out at the Holiday Travel Park. So if you get a chance to get out there, you can hear my band Thumbs Up play on Friday night, September the 4th. Got a plug for my band, too. So join us again next Saturday from 2 to 3. I'm George Yates. Have a great day. It's beautiful out there. Bye now.
Coming from the West Coast, and, it will be a disrupting force today.
CBS's Chris Van Cleve. This is CBS Aviation Safety Consultant Mark Rosenkirk.
There will be a domino effect. There's no doubt about it. Those aircraft that were leaving the Baltimore, D.C. area will impact the system along the line.
Oh, yeah. There are reports of flight delays in airports across the country right now.